I have the PBIS apps website up. I just want to show you, if you're unfamiliar, how to access it. You go to the PBIS apps website, go to the assessment portion, and then if you scroll down, it says TFI all the way down here at the bottom. If you click there, the entire document is up here where it says the TFI PDF. I will be referencing some pages. It's that big document there that those page numbers are based off of. And then I'll also be talking about the action plan piece in a minute. There is one within the TFI document itself. I don't like it as much as the one down here. The action plan, the dots X down here at the bottom. It's a little bit bigger, has a little bit more space for your teams to work. So, TFI. As Marlene mentioned with the School Climate Transformation Grant, we are strongly encouraged to switch to the TFI. And the original thought it was going to be kind of like the BOQ where we took it in the spring and it was kind of a one and done thing. I went down to the national conference and Rob Horner was talking about it, and he said this is more of a progress monitoring tool. You should be taking it in the fall, setting your action plan, coming back together, reevaluating the tier that you looked at, and then writing another action plan, kind of more of a progress monitoring tool more than a one and done type of thing. So I did, basically in a month and a half, I did 18 schools. I'm going to kind of walk you through my process. So the first piece is the walkthrough. That is available, that is part of the TFI big document that I showed you. It's page 28 of that PDF. The walkthrough typically took an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete. I highly suggest going at lunchtime because, especially at the elementary level, the kids love talking to the new person. Who are you? Give me the quiz. They really got into it, so that was very exciting. Part of what's not on the walkthrough piece is within the TFI, one of the sections is about the visibility of PBIS within the building, so you have the expectations posted in various settings. So that's not part of the walkthrough. So if you're not familiar with the building and you don't know, okay, what is the visibility, you might want to take some notes just so you have that, because one of the questions within the TFI is posted in, I believe it's at least 5 areas. So are those things posted? So the walkthrough, like I said, go in, I let my schools know I was coming. It took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours to do that. There's a staff survey part of it. You're supposed to interview at least 10% or 5 staff members. There are 15 little slots on the walkthrough tool. I talked to 15 people just to get a bit bigger picture. The 3 questions are, what are your school-wide expectations? Have you taught those behavior expectations or those rules to your students? And then have you given out any acknowledgments in the past 2 months, whether it's a Panther ticket or a Phoenix feather or whatever they're calling them? Use the language that the school uses. For 2 on the TFI, for the first part, 90% of the staff can list 67% of the expectations. So most schools have 3 expectations. If they can name at least 2 of them, and 90%, that scores you the 2. As far as giving the acknowledgments, they want 90% of the staff giving out acknowledgments in the past 2 months. That gives you the 2 on the TFI. So it kind of gives you an idea how it scores. Student survey, talked to at least 10 students. I talked to 15. One school, I think I talked to 30 because I was there at lunch and I had a line. They all wanted to talk to me. And I had one kid come back a couple times. He goes, "Can I take that quiz again?" So they get very excited. And for them, it's essentially, what are the school-wide expectations? I received a Phoenix feather, a Panther paw, or whatever it's called. And they're very excited, and you know, what'd you get it for? Oh, and they give you all kinds of crazy ideas why they got it, but it kind of gets you to know if they know what's going on. The goal is 70% of the students can state 67% of the expectations, and acknowledgments is at least 50% of the students. With the one thing I did notice with, especially the elementary students, one of my schools, they say the Pledge of Allegiance, and they say it's called their Mustang Pride or whatever, and then so they go, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. And then they say, we are blah, 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 Mustangs. Like they all do it. So they tied it all together. So it's kind of cute. But it really gives you a good understanding. Yes?
Are the goals available to us or on the TFI?
That is, those are what a 2 would be. It's on the TFI. There's a rubric on that saying what a 0, 1, and 2 is. Those are the criteria for a 2 for a specific item on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. The TFI assessment itself, I just printed out hard copies for my teams. I would open up the window and fill out the TFI as we went through. So when I provided hard copies, I gave them tier 1 and tier 2. I didn't assess anybody in the tier 3 piece. So tier 1 has 15 items. That's pages 6 through 11 within the big TFI document. And tier 2 has 13 items, and that's on pages 12 through 16. Like I said, I'll just give them a hard copy. Some of the teams would take notes on it, and that will help them with their action plan. We'll talk about that in a second. On average, 45 to 60 minutes to complete. Most of them are about 45 to 50 minutes. I had a couple that went a little bit longer, but it was mostly in that 45-minute range, just to kind of give you a time frame. And that included going through all the tier 1 and tier 2 and writing the action plan. So that was the complete package. People in attendance, typically myself, I had the tier 1 and tier coach there, and the administrator if they were available. On occasion, they would have 1 or 2 team members, like they had like key team members that would attend. They would attend as well, but for the most part, it was just the coaches because they had the best familiarity with all the systems. I had the ability to open up the assessment window, so I would just open up the window when I started the meeting. The first 3 questions were standard, and that was who completed the walkthrough, who was there, who essentially was completing the assessment, and I don't remember the third one, but essentially, who did the walkthrough? Who was there? Was it just the team, the external coach, or external coach and team? As I said, I provided that hard copy for each of my team members. Some of them took notes, some just looked through it and then handed it back, said use it at another meeting. Some kept it for their records. The items are scored on a 0, 1, or 2. The rubric is within the document, so it says this is what a 2 is, this is what a 1 is. If my teams had doubt or there was a lot of conversation, I typically score lower because then we could action plan around it. After we completed the tier, we started that discussion because obviously it was fresh in their mind. The ones that scored, they were able to look back on their notes. If not, usually about 2 minutes later, I could pull up the results themselves, and then we started that action plan. You select one tier. So you either select tier 1 or you select tier 2. You don't select both. And then you select 2 or 3, no more than 3 items to focus on for the next 3 months, and that's what we wrote our action plans around. So with that said, all my teams, their end date was March. So I'm gonna come back in March, re-meet with all my teams, and when we come back, if they focus on, for example, tier 1, we're just gonna redo tier 1, see how they did, if they improved, if there's still areas that we need to improve, and we can write another set of action plans either around those same items or another point of tier 1 itself, or we can say we shored up what we needed to do, let's focus on tier 2 now, or vice versa. Let's see here. As I said, the action plan, there is one available within the TFI PDF document itself. It's got very small as far as your amount of workspace available. So that DocX that I showed you to access, it's a little bit bigger, bigger spaces for everybody to work on. So that's the one I prefer to use, but feel free to use either or. So we got burning questions and discussions. Yes.
When you, so this is tier 1. So if you're only doing tier 1 and you've taken the TFI, can you choose to focus on a few items within tier 1, or are you really just focusing on tier 1 for your action plan?
All right, so tier 1 is broken down into 15 items. So if, for example, 1.5 1.4, you scored a 1 on, that's what I'd write my action plan around. And then 1.6, I would write an action plan around, for example. So, and those would just be tier 1. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
All right.
Got that?
So as tier 1, you're looking at the tier 1 stuff, just look at those 15 items and you can create your action plan around those.
Who does the walkthrough?
I did.
So you would do it in our, like,
If I was to come to yours,
that's what I'm like, do you want to come do it at our school?
if I was to come to your school, I would come in, I would do the walkthrough, I'd let the coaches and administration know I'm coming 9 o'clock on Thursday. I'd come through and do the walkthrough. And then after the walkthrough, I would contact the team and say, let's meet, these are the people I need, these are some items you may want to have access to. Let's get together and